Hey, what's up, Clover fam? Thanks so much for coming back to my channel. I'm super excited that you are here and I appreciate you guys watching. Today we're going to talk about something that has been requested several times. We're going to talk about the 14 different ways that I was able to save $150,000 in less than 2 years while also paying off about $40,000 in 2 years. But before we get started, be sure to hit that like and hit subscribe. It helps me out a lot and it'll tell the YouTube algorithm to push my content forward so more people can see it. I appreciate it. So these 14 tips that we're going to go through are exactly what I did to put down $40,000 of my debt as well as save $150,000 in just 2 years. There's no BS and there's no super secret trick that anybody's going to be surprised by. It's really just simple things that I did that were a bunch of different small changes that added up into some really large changes. So let's get into it, shall we? But first, let's just talk about where I was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, you guys wouldn't recognize me. 2 years ago, I was $70,000 in debt, almost $80,000 in debt. I was living paycheck to paycheck, even though I was making about $70,000 a year. And I was blowing about $600 every 2 weeks on things like eating out and drinking out, like getting cocktails, ordering in Grubhub, doing all of those things that people who have $60,000, $70,000 of debt probably shouldn't be doing. I never could figure out why I was still living to paycheck, even though every year that I lived in Chicago, I was making more money than I ever had before, and yet I couldn't seem to save any kind of money. I couldn't save any money? Any money. I couldn't save any money. Truth be told, at the time, I really just never thought I'd be able to retire, so I just kind of went with the flow, worried not so much about thinking about the future, and I just spent money and figured I'd worry about it later. What I didn't realize is this stressed me out a lot. I was constantly wondering where my money was going, and I was also worried about how I was going to pay for things that were important to me, like going on vacations and like saving up so that I had an emergency fund. I just never felt like I could get ahead. So finally I decided to track everything that I ever spent, and that is when I was blown away by the numbers. Now, if we fast forward today, there's a big difference between who I was in 2018 and who I am now in 2021. If you haven't noticed by now, I'm pretty good with money. I have over $150,000 saved for retirement, and I also have less than $30,000 of debt because I was able to put down $40,000 in the last 2 years. About $15,000 saved between my emergency fund as well as my save for a rental property fund. And even cooler than that, my net worth has increased by almost $200,000 just in 2 years. How'd I do it? Let's talk about it. All right, so the very first thing that I did and have been doing for the last 2.5 years is I have tracked literally everything that I've ever spent my money on. You can read the entire list of things that I've spent my money on over the last 2 years, really ever since I've started doing Clover, and you can see where my money went, what mistakes I made while budgeting, and what I overspent on, as well as what I wasn't spending enough on, like debt and savings. I'll leave a link to all of my different spending reports in the description below. I believe that tracking everything that you spend is such an important step for people who are starting out on their financial journey. The reason is because you will end up finding money that you wonder where it went at the end of every month. And instead of wondering where that money went, you'll be able to start applying that money to things that you actually want to spend your money on, whether it's saving for travel, or whether it's saving for an emergency fund, or whether it's saving for college. Seeing how much money I spent on things like booze and eating out and drinking out really just kind of shocked me, and it honestly gave me the push that I needed to make the changes that I needed to make. At the time, if you had asked me what I valued most, I would have said travel and experiences and spending time with my family and friends. But if you had looked at my spending, you would have seen that actually what I really valued, if you saw where my money was going, is I valued eating out, I valued going on dates, I valued buying cocktails at really overpriced bars.
And that made me really uncomfortable.
A second but equally important thing that I did is I got really clear on why I wanted to get good with money. The thing is, when you are starting your personal finance journey, it is a long journey. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon, and it's something that just essentially takes a really long time. And when you're doing something long-term like getting debt-free or trying to achieve financial independence, you need to know why you're doing it, because if you don't know why you're doing it, it's going to be so easy to quit. For me, I really had to figure out what it is that I want my money to do for me and why I want it to do that for me. And so for me, when I tracked that money and I realized how much money I I was spending in areas that I didn't actually value, I had to spend some time thinking about, okay, what do I actually value? And if I had a dream life, where could I put all my money? Where would I want all my money to go? And that's when I came up with the life that I want and started working on that immediately. I want to live a life where I don't have to report to anybody except for myself. And I also want the ability to spend my time exactly how I please. When I first started out, I didn't know exactly why I was doing it, but I knew that I wanted to be able to spend my time how I wanted. Whether that was taking a year off from work in order to travel the world, or whether it was just having enough money to save so that I didn't have to work anymore. As the years went on, I really clarified what that why was for me. And ultimately, my why, it all goes back to peace. So when I think about my life when I'm financially independent, the thing that I think about most is just living a life of peace, not having to worry about where my money is coming from, not having to worry about how I'm spending my time, and having the option to work on the things that I really want instead of the things that I just have to because I need to make money. That why is so sexy and exciting to me that it keeps me going on days that I want to just blow all my paycheck on a trip to Costa Rica or overspend on something stupid that in the moment I want, but long term it doesn't help me get to my long-term goals. So if you're getting started on your financial journey, or if you're even just thinking about it, or you're halfway through, or you want to, up your game, spend a lot of time thinking about what your ideal life looks like and how money will help you get there. All right, number 3, the next thing that I did is I created a budget and I budgeted accordingly. This may seem totally obvious, but at the same time, I know so many people who want to get good at their money, but they're not budgeting. And budgets can come in many different forms, but for me, I just needed a budget to tell my money where to go. Money will go where we tell it to go, and I wanted to make sure that all my money wasn't just going to eating and drinking out. I wanted to make sure it was going to the things that I cared about most. So I wanted it to go to travel. I wanted it to go to debt freedom. I wanted it to go to an emergency fund, and I wanted it to go to savings. So instead of just holding my breath and hoping that each paycheck I would just stay under budget by not spending all of my money, instead I would make sure that that money wasn't going towards things that don't bring value to my life, and instead I'm spending it on things that really matter to me. If you're just starting, a budget takes some time to perfect. I don't think I got it right for at least 6 months. I had to adjust accordingly. I had to figure out what worked for me. And man, even before I started budgeting, I did the envelope method by Dave Ramsey, which is not something I recommend. And it took me 3 years before I realized, oh, this budgeting method does not work for me at all. So don't just get discouraged when you start. Instead, try to see, okay, what am I doing in this budgeting that's not working for me, and how do I adjust it? Another thing I had to do is I had to give up on black and white thinking. I'm the type of person who can sometimes think in extremes, so I can be an all or nothing type of person, but that's really not helpful when it comes to most things in life, and it's definitely not helpful when it comes to managing a budget. For me, I had to get over this black and white, okay, if I go over budget in this one category, then I might as well just blow the whole budget for the rest of the pay period, and then I'll start over next pay period. To solve that issue, I ended up just adjusting my budget every pay period. To solve this issue, I just started adjusting my budget. So if an unexpected expense came up, instead of just blowing the budget and deciding, oh, well, I guess I'm over budget this period, I would adjust the category. So say I had a doctor's appointment that I didn't plan for, and so I had to spend $30 on a copay. Instead of just going over $30, I would increase my budget for my health medical. This way, I wouldn't see the red lines that say I was over budget, and then this mentality of like, oh, well, I guess I ruined it, better wait till next time. That mentality wouldn't sink in. It's so simple, and it seems kind of like, well, you could have just not gone over and you could have just not had the mentality, but seeing those numbers and making sure I was in budget is what really helped me. And for some reason that helped my mindset too. And by increasing my budget, I would actually spend less money, because instead of saying F it and going over in every budgeting category, I would just notice, okay, I need to increase this by $30, and that's it. I would just keep existing. It wouldn't feel like I had blown the budget, so I was able to then adjust accordingly. Now, the 5th thing that I did is I started giving every single dollar a job. This is a type of budgeting called zero-based budgeting. Now, I do a combination of both zero-based budgeting and values-based budgeting, so I do give every dollar that comes in a job, whether that's going into savings or whether that's going into debt, or if it's going into a certain category, but I also simultaneously make sure that as a whole, I am spending more money on the things that matter to me than anything else. So most of my money is going towards paying off debt, my home, as well as saving. So I'm saving for a home fund right now, and I'm also saving for like retirement. So my Roth IRA, my 401k, all of those things, every dollar has a job. The reason I like making sure that every dollar has a job is because it makes my savings goals and my debt goals just as important as a bill. So every month I know I'm going to find the money to pay rent, so why shouldn't I treat my savings and my debt, which is arguably more important for my future than always making sure that I have my cell phone bill paid. So I like it because it sets those priorities, and it's like, instead of budgeting with all of the money that's left over, or instead of saving all of the money that's left over from all of my different categories, instead I'm saving a certain number and then I'm deciding what to do with the rest of the money instead of the reverse. I personally like knowing that I'm accounting for every dollar. I like knowing that these dollars are going to work for me and they're going to work to create the life that I want most. I also like this because there's never any question of where my money went. I always know exactly where all of my money went. Now, another thing that I had to start doing is I had to start saying no quite a bit. So instead of saying yes to everything, like vacations with my girlfriends or every kind of weekend trip that we wanted to do, or going out for drinks every time someone asked, instead I had to focus on saying yes to the things that mattered most to me. Because the thing is, going out for drinks, going out for dinner, going on weekend trips, those things really add up. And if I said yes to everything that I wanted to do, or a yes to everything my friends wanted to do, then I would never meet my savings goals. So I got good at saying, nope, it's not in the budget, or sorry, I can't, or sorry, I'm busy. And that may sound like I'm not having fun, but I am. I'm just making sure that I'm saying yes to the things that I really want to be doing and I really want to be spending my money on. We only have a limited amount of resources available to us, and I want to make sure that the resources that I do have are going to the things that matter most to me, bring me the most value in my life, and also bring me the amount of joy that I want in my life. So in order to do that, we have to say no to things that don't bring us that joy, that value, that energy that we want. And honestly, it's helped out my calendar, but it's also helped out my bank account. Prior to starting this journey, I used to say yes to everything. And the thing is, most of my friends are in different friend groups. They're not all friends with each other. So sometimes I would have social engagements like 7 times a week, whether it was just grabbing drinks here, grabbing a coffee there, going to dinner, going to this one thing, and that would add up. Not only would I be exhausted and tired, I guess those are the same thing, but I'd also have spent so much money on doing things that I didn't really want to do. So now if I have to say no to something, I'll suggest a cheaper alternative, or I'll just flat out say it's not in the budget. Now, almost just as important, I also splurged on the things that I really wanted to splurge on. So last year in 2 years ago in 2019, I spent like $10,000 just on traveling, but that was because that's what really mattered to me. The thing is, when we work our splurges into the budget, it's so much easier to stick to the budget. I care about travel. I care about the kind of travel I want to go on. I don't want to go on cruises or trips to Disneyland. I want to go on experiences and I want to go see the world. So to me, spending $10,000 on travel and saying yes, yes, yes to that life makes so much more sense to me than just saying yes to all of these things that don't really matter to me and end up being at $10,000 at the end of the year anyway. Even in small things. So even if we're not talking about spending $10,000 on travel, I still work splurges in. So like when it's my birthday, I make sure I work in a couple $100 extra so that I can spend it however the heck I want. But it's knowing that I'm budgeting for that, and I'm knowing that I'm planning ahead so that I have the money to do that and not worry about it. Okay, so number 8, I actually refinanced my student loans twice. This saved me thousands of dollars, and that's because when I first started this journey, my student loans were sitting at about 8%, which is crazy high. So after the first year of my budgeting journey, of my debt-free journey, of all of this journey, I refinanced the first time and I got it down to 4.75%, which was really great. Then in 2020, I decided to do it again and I got it all the way down to 3.25%. Yes, I have higher monthly payments, but at the same time, the amount of interest is so low, I don't have any desire to pay it off early now. To me, it's worth it to be able to borrow that money so that I can make more money by investing or purchasing a home. And by home, I mean rental property. Now, another thing that I did is I actually paid down the smallest debts first. So some of you might know this as the snowball method of paying off debt. But my snowball method ended up being kind of the avalanche method too, which the avalanche method is focused on the numbers. So you're focused on paying off the highest interest rate debt first. When I started my debt-free journey, even though I'm not really on a debt-free journey anymore, now I'm on a wealth building journey. When I started the journey though, I was focused on paying off my car debt first and then using that money that I was paying on the car debt to pay off my student loans. So I paid off my car within a year of starting the journey, and then I started applying that money to my student loans. And now that my student loans are at a 3.25% interest rate, I don't put any extra money on them every month because it's about $700 a month for me to make those payments. And like I said, I'd rather be investing the rest. Now, similarly to finding my why and learning and knowing and like breathing why I wanted to get debt free or why I wanted to start building wealth and managing my money, I had to make a lot of small goals along the way, and I'm still making small goals. Now, these small goals are almost as important as your why because they're the things that are gonna keep you motivated along the way. Like I said earlier, getting debt free or building wealth takes a lot of time. There's no shortcut. It's not some quick fix and then you're done. And so you need to be able to stay motivated for the long term. The way that I do this is not only by knowing my why, but also by making small goals. My goals they're pretty wide range. For example, last year I had a goal of putting down $20,000 of debt on my student loans. And when I achieved that goal, I felt really good about it. It feels like a reason to keep going. Another monthly goal I've had is like to spend less than $150 on eating out and dating. Or sometimes I'll have a monthly goal of not spending anything on alcohol. Or sometimes I'll have a monthly goal of not spending out any money eating out. These little goals are so important because it's like a psychological boost every time I achieve that goal. And it makes me feel like I'm making progress. My next goals in 2021 are I want to save for a down payment. I want to save at least $10,000 for a down payment this year. My income's a little bit lower this year because of all the investing I'm doing from my paycheck, but I also want to max out a Roth IRA this year as well as max out my 401k. So that's a lot of different tiny goals that I'm working towards that obviously make a much larger impact when you add it all together. Now, the 11th thing that I've done in the last 2 years in order to save $150,000 and put down about $40,000 on my debt, I've done a lot of side hustles. If you follow my Instagram, which my Instagram's right below, so be sure to go follow me, you know I do quite a few random things to make money. So one of those things is I do pet portraits. So you see the painting behind me of the deer, that's a painting that I did. I am a painter and I will sell pet portraits, or I do sell pet portraits. So I actually have a situation where I work with a local canine PT, like physical therapy office, and whenever a dog passes, I paint a pet portrait for them. So I end up getting money that way. It's not a ton, but it's like a little bit that helps every month. I also have managed social media in the past and charged for that. And then the most lucrative side hustle that I have is investing in real estate. I obviously do financial coaching too, and that is a side hustle for me. I have a 9-to-5 as well. So if you're interested in getting financial coaching, by the way, links below. I do have slots available for people who are interested. I am taking on new clients too. And talking about real estate, this is the perfect segue to number 12. I started investing in real estate. So my investing's been a little bit different from most people's in that I fund flips. So I work with a local contractor here who is flipping homes in the Chicago area, and basically I give him a loan and I make interest once the project is complete and he sells the home. So it's been a very lucrative side hustle for me, and the reason that I love it is because I don't have to do anything other than give him my money and pay taxes on the money that I make. Right now, just through investing alone, the $63,000 that I have makes up about 40% of my retirement portfolio. I've had to do literally nothing to make that money other than just give him money and have him flip the house. So take my money. Unfortunately, he just recently got bought out, so likely there won't be any more investment opportunities, which is why I'm going to be purchasing my own rental property so I can get into the real estate game myself. We're almost there. We're on 13. So the 13th thing that I did is I started maxing out my 401k. Now, in the financial community, I know there's a lot of mixed reviews about 401ks, but I still think that it's a really great vehicle for retirement. What I love about the 401k is just the simplicity of it. I don't have to worry. I'm paying myself first. It's going right into my investments, and that's pretty much it. I'll rebalance my portfolio like once a year or twice a year, but for the most part, it's kind of just a set it and forget it. And through that, I've been able to save so much money. When I started this journey 2 years ago, I only had $10,000 saved in my 401k, and now I have about $80,000 saved in my 401k, and that's through just investing and putting my money in index funds. So last year when the market really dipped, I increased my 401k contributions to 25% pre-paycheck or pre-tax, and it skyrocketed my investments. And so even though I only put $20,000 into my 401k last year, I made almost $40,000 because of the dip in the market. The thing too about a 401k is that if I just relied on just investing in my 401k and putting the maximum $19,500 in every year, I would be a millionaire by the time I was 50 and I could retire. Well, I probably won't retire on $1 million, but I could, and that's pretty cool to think about, that I'll be a millionaire by the time I'm 50 just by maxing out my 401k. I'm hoping I'll make it to that status a whole lot earlier than that from my real estate investments as well as just my hustle, but we'll see. At least worst case scenario, I'll be a millionaire by the time I'm 50. All right, we've made it to number 14, and 14 is I stopped trying to keep up with the local scene here in Chicago. Now, for any of my Chicago socialite followers, it's may seem like a sin to say that, but there's so many things going on in Chicago all of the time, and I love it. That's one of the reasons I like living here. But at the same time, if I tried to keep up with every hot new restaurant, every new hot bar, every new pop-up experience, every one of those things, every show, every concert, whatever, I would just never ever sleep, and I just also would spend so much money doing that. And the thing is, yes, it's cool to do every once in a while, and yes, I love doing it every once in a while, but most of it just doesn't really add anything to my life. Going to a new show, going to a new restaurant, going to a cocktail bar, doing that every week is like a car payment. And ultimately, I'd rather be investing that money. And instead, I would rather spend the money on things that I really, really, really want to do. It was really fun to do that when I was 23 and spent money like I was making the type of money that I'm making now. But I'm kind of over it these days, and especially with the pandemic and what has happened in the last year, it's just made me realize how much I value the simpler things in life, like going on hikes, spending time outdoors, maybe getting a lunch, maybe grabbing a beer at a brewery, but ultimately just kind of taking it slow. And of course, working on Clover. But those are the 14 things that I have done. And the thing is, when I started, I didn't write out all these 14 things that I was gonna do. It just kind of happened. And honestly, I could have never predicted the changes that would occur. And that kind of excites me. The thing is, you never know what's going to happen, and you never know the ways that your life is gonna change, your career is gonna change, or the type of money you're making is gonna change, or you just never know what's gonna happen. And I find that so exciting. When I started this journey, I thought I was just really gonna focus on becoming debt-free, but then I realized what a limiting view that is as I started to learn more and more. And instead of focusing on debt freedom these days, I'm really just focusing on building wealth and being smart with my money. I really don't think that Chloe 2.5 years ago would have recognized the person that I've become, and especially if she was just looking at my financial statements. But the thing is, that's so exciting because who knows what the next 2 years is gonna bring, and who knows if this Chloe will be able to recognize the new one. So I'm really glad I started, and I hope this was helpful. I hope this is the type of thing that helps other people realize, like, you don't have to figure it all at once. You can just decide to do one thing and it will compound itself, and you'll start doing something else that's helping you along the way as well. So that's pretty much it. That's all I've got for you guys today. Those are the 14 things that I did in the last 2 years to save $150,000 for retirement, as well as pay off $40,000 in debt. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to hit the like button. And if you're not already following me on Instagram and TikTok, be sure to do that. I post there daily, and I'm also just doing different content on those things. So connect with me there, and always let me know what you think of this stuff. And put your tips down below. What have you done in the last couple of years in order to build the success, the financial success, or really just get started? So thanks again so much for watching, and thanks again so much for watching. Yes, that was a real sentence. My brain, I've given up coffee, and I just, I'm not functioning at the same level as I used to. So anyway, thanks again. And if you haven't already subscribed, please be sure to do that. It helps me out a lot. And thank you guys so much, and I'll see you next time.